There is a reason I chose to bring you this story 2 days before Christmas. From now until January 3rd is the most dangerous time of year for people struggling with their mental health. We're going to talk about a really sad story, and then we're going to have a little chat at the end of this video, and you're going to make me a promise. Because I love you, you're part of my family, and I'm always here for you. Let's listen to today's story and remember not to make permanent decisions when you are in a temporary state of mind. Things always get better. They always can, and they usually do. If this story was not so well documented, you would not believe it to be true. Investigators have called it the most bizarre murder story of their career. The airplane touched down just after twilight, wheels hissing against the Gainesville runway like an exhale no one wanted to hear. Inside the cabin had been a young woman from Portsmouth, England, a woman who had spent months circling the idea of her own death like something sacred, something inevitable. She carried no visible fear, at least none the other passengers noticed, just a backpack, a plan, and the kind of emptiness that makes a person cross an ocean to find the man who promised to finish the job she no longer believed she could do herself. She had told no one in her family where she was going. She had left behind a partner who begged strangers online for help finding her. And waiting for her in Marion County was a 53-year-old man who had already bought the rope, the shovel, and the time he needed. Investigators would later say she came to America seeking death. They would also say that the man who picked her up was more than willing to give it to her. But the truth hides in the hours between touchdown and burial, hours captured in video files, receipts, surveillance logs, and messages carved from despair. On today's episode, we walk those final hours. The final hours of a woman who put out a message. Someone kill me. I'm your host, Stacey Lee. Let's begin. Portsmouth is a place where the sea reminds you it is older than any city, where storms slam against stone fortifications built centuries ago. It's a place of sailors and long departures, a fitting home perhaps for a woman who always felt like she was standing at the edge of something she wasn't meant to survive. 32-year-old Sonia Exelby lived in this coastal city, a place defined by naval history and maritime grit. She had friends, she had a long-term partner, and she had a private escalating war inside her own mind, one marked by years of suicidal ideation, self-hatred, and a growing belief that she was an awful person who crushed everyone who ever loved her. These words weren't pulled from a journal after the fact. They were spoken on video in Florida, bruised and whispering in the last days of her life. Her partner would later tell reporters that Sonia had been deeply vulnerable, battling mental health issues for years. She wasn't someone planning a vacation. She was someone planning an ending. In 2024, a full year before her death, authorities in the United Kingdom documented that Sonia had been seeking someone to kill her. Not hypothetically, not online fantasy, literally. She had attempted to arrange travel previously, only to abandon it at the last moment. Those who knew her say she hid this side of herself behind moments of normalcy, studying music, talking with friends, drowning herself in the routines of a life she increasingly believed she did not deserve to live. But ideation evolves, and by 2025, Sonia wasn't just contemplating death. She was searching for someone willing to carry the burden for her. That someone lived across the ocean, and he was very, very willing. When Sonia Sonia landed in Florida on October 10th, 2025. Dwain Hall was already waiting. 53 years old, based in Marion County, a roadside assistance worker with a business called Solver Wolf Roadside Services. According to investigators, the two had met online roughly 2 years earlier on a fetish-based website known for extreme content, including violent fantasies and suicide themes. Sonia reportedly expressed her desire for violent death. Hall, investigators say, didn't just read the messages, he cultivated them. On the day of her arrival, Dwain Hall visited a Walmart before picking Sonia up at the airport. Surveillance footage shows him buying a rope, a shovel, and a gun, along with cleaning supplies. These weren't part of a welcome to Florida shopping list. These were the tools. Investigators say Dwain Hall then drove to Gainesville Regional Airport and picked Sonia Exelby up directly from the arrivals area. She had flown across the world to meet a man she believed would kill her gently, quickly, or at least efficiently, a darkly naive hope rooted in a mind drowning in self-hatred. Dwain drove Sonia to an Airbnb in Reddick, Florida, a rural property surrounded by trees thick enough to erase anything that happened inside. It was private, secluded, timed perfectly. Inside that home, a video camera was rolling. What investigators later discovered on that footage was chilling, not because it was violent, but because of the emotional wreckage visible in both people. Sonia appeared bruised, disoriented, and quiet, not the fantasy of a consenting partner eager to die, collapsing under psychological weight, but a woman in unbearable pain. Dwain Hall can be heard prompting her, questions designed to elicit a verbalized yes. Questions that investigators say were structured to look like consent. He was asking her, "Are you giving me permission to do this?" Consent from a woman who repeatedly called herself awful, who winced between answers, who nodded slowly as if trying to convince herself of something she no longer believed. In messages to a friend sent the next day, Sonia wrote, "He made it clear there was no way out unless I shoot him. I thought he'd do it quick and not give my mind time to stew." These are the words of someone trapped. Dwain Hall would later tell investigators he was acting as a mentor, trying to save Sonia. The bank transfers, the shovel, the Airbnb rental, and the body buried in the woods tell a different story. On October 17th, 1 week after Sonia arrived in the States, authorities found a shallow grave in a wooded area of Marion County. Inside the grave were human remains. They would soon be identified as Sonia Exelby. A shovel found in Dwain Hall's garage matched the same brand and model as the one purchased days earlier, and the shovel's handle carried Sonia's DNA. The grave contained a torn label matching the store packaging of that same shovel. The body was taken to the coroner. The autopsy revealed 4 stab wounds consistent with a knife. Sonia hadn't died by overdose. She hadn't been smothered. She hadn't been gently eased out of consciousness. She had been stabbed. And then she had been buried. During this same time period, Dwain Hall attempted multiple transfers from Sonia's bank accounts. Financial logs disclosed attempts beginning October 11th, the first day she was under his control, and the pieces locked together: the shovel, the purchases, the Airbnb, the video, the bruises, the messages, the grave, and the money. A forensic timeline leading directly back to the man who'd promised to mentor her. Authorities arrested Dwain Hall in November of 2025, just weeks ago, charging him with first-degree murder, kidnapping, credit card fraud, and unlawful use of a communication device. Investigators say the accumulation of digital evidence, financial records, and DNA left little room for ambiguity. But the deeper question, the one haunting both sides of the Atlantic, is this: where does vulnerable consent end and predation begin? The answer lies beyond the dirt in that shallow grave. It lies in the psychology of exploitation, the mask of helping, and a kind of evil that lives in men like Dwain Hall. When investigators finally arrested Dwain Hall, they weren't looking at a man who had been surprised by tragedy. They were looking at someone who had directly walked into it. Someone who, according to their reports, had been preparing long before Sonia ever boarded her flight. Dwain Hall told detectives a curious story, that he had been a mentor to Sonia Exelby, that he had been guiding her emotionally, that he was trying to stop her from killing herself, not help her. But those claims had already been undercut by years of online communication, by evidence pulled from his devices, and by the sheer logistics of the week she spent in Florida. Dwain Hall admitted that he first met Sonia on a fetish-themed website known for violent imagery and suicide content. Investigators say the messages between them were not therapeutic. They were not supportive. They were steeped in death, bondage, and Sonia's desire to be harmed, desire she expressed because she was mentally unwell, not because she understood the weight of what she was agreeing to. Why these websites exist and are not shut down? I don't know. You know I am a big proponent of freedom of speech. I am also a big proponent of helping people who need help. And we have got to strike a better balance than we are doing right now. For a predator, suicidal ideation is not a warning sign, it's an invitation. Dwain Hall's behavior, investigators suggest, fits a pattern seen in cases of exploitation, a vulnerable person searching for an escape, and a predator framing himself as the answer. Consent becomes a script, an agency becomes a performance, and the victim's pain becomes part of the abuser's mythology. In the video recovered from that Florida Airbnb, Dwain Hall is calm and detached, guiding Sonia in verbal compliance. The bruises visible on her body complicate his claims of help. Her silence complicates his claims of mentorship. Her messages to friends saying she felt trapped, that there was no way out unless she killed him, complicate everything. Investigators, in their affidavits, describe Sonia as noticeably distressed. They say her assent to Hall's leading questions appeared hesitant. She displayed signs of emotional overwhelm, confusion, and resignation. The clarity of someone consciously consenting to death does not seem to be there. Psychologists who study coercive control often describe something called fatal compliance, where a victim feels so psychologically cornered that they stop resisting entirely. They nod, they agree, they repeat the script given to them, not from desire, but from sheer collapse. Dwain Hall's own behavior further erodes the idea that he was there to help. He bought a shovel and rope before picking her up. He drove her to a secluded Airbnb, not a hospital, not a mental health treatment center, not a counselor, not any form of professional help. Hall filmed Sonia while she was bruised and emotional, not for documentation, but for justification. He attempted to take money from her bank account shortly after, and according to the autopsy, he stabbed her 4 times before the fatal wound. These are not the actions of a mentor. These are the actions of a man following a plan. Investigators also highlight an unsettling detail. Sonia had written on her computer that she was suicidal and traveling to the United States to be sexually abused, tortured, and possibly murdered. She wrote that. The phrasing is stark, graphic, echoing the darkest corners of fetish forums where harm is romanticized and death is framed as intimate. It's just very upsetting. Dwain Hall, in that context, was not a savior. He was a participant. In online subcultures built around extreme masochism, the lines between fantasy and criminality dissolves quickly. There is no safe boundary, no moderator strong enough to prevent the blurring of imagination and reality. And predators, those who thrive in the shadows, learn to recognize the difference between someone who wants a fantasy and someone who is too broken to distinguish between fantasy and self-destruction. Sonia, investigators say, had been the latter, and Dwain Hall, investigators allege, did what predators do. He offered her exactly what would ensure she didn't survive.
And a woman flies to Florida to be murdered on purpose? It's the wild investigation that has detectives asking a whole lot of questions.
And Marion County investigators call it the most bizarre murder case they've ever seen. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Luann Sorrell.
And I'm John Brown. It was a murder for hire plot, but here's the twist. She allegedly hired the hit on herself. And investigators say the woman flew halfway around the world to Central Florida to be tortured and killed. And this man allegedly took her up on the offer. Fox 35 was the only TV news crew in court this morning when Dwain Hall went before a judge. Investigators say Hall murdered her and then dumped her body in the woods. Fox 35's Marie Ettinger is live on that story tonight. So, Marie, detectives say the woman from the UK paid the suspect. This is such a bizarre case.
It really is. Hall told investigators he was supposed to get $4,000 for this crime, but that he'd actually only gotten $1,200 in the end. He told investigators he was upset about that. The FDLE says a woman in the United Kingdom posted on a fetish website looking for someone to abuse and kill her.
Dwain Hall?
And that this man took her up on the offer. Dwain Hall is now facing charges for homicide and kidnapping in a case a former detective called bizarre and unthinkable.
What were your thoughts when I called you about this case?
You know, my first thought was, wow, I literally have been in this business 30 plus years. I have never heard anything close to what you had explained to me.
According to court documents, Hall told investigators he met Sonia Exelby online a couple years ago. The FDLE says Exelby flew from England to Gainesville on October 10th. Hall picked her up and drove her to an Airbnb Exelby had reserved in Reddick. Investigators say they found video on Hall's phone taken the next day, showing Exelby covered in cuts and bruises, with audio of Hall demanding Exelby verbally give consent to be stabbed. Detectives found messages Exelby sent a friend over Discord that day, expressing regret.
It doesn't matter if the victim is willing or not willing to be murdered. It is against the law to take anyone's life in a premeditated fashion or planned fashion.
Investigators talked with Hall on October 13th and 14th while Exelby was still considered missing. An arrest report says he'd tried to run her credit cards through his roadside assistance business. He was arrested then for fraud. Her body was found in Marion Oaks 3 days later.
I agree under these circumstances that there is no condition of bond that would assure your presence in court, keep the community safe, and the facts of this case. There is a large amount of evidence against you.
Hall's arrest report details the evidence detectives have against him. Investigators found bank records and surveillance video showing him purchasing several items, including a rope they found at the Airbnb and a shovel they later found with his and Exelby's DNA on it. They found that shovel's label left behind at her burial site. And they found Facebook messages he sent from jail detailing a package he'd mailed to a friend in Ohio, which they went to retrieve, finding Exelby's blood on it. As you heard the judge say, Hall will be staying in jail pending his trial that he is due in court December 23rd. At 6 o'clock tonight, you'll hear from a woman who used to know him, and you'll hear from a mental health expert. Reporting live, Marie Ettinger, Fox 34.
When Sonia failed to board her return flight to England on October 13th, alarms started ringing on the other side of the Atlantic. Her partner, already worried by her mental state, had been tracking her online presence until it vanished. He described her publicly as vulnerable and really struggling with her mental health. He begged for help, posting pleas on forums and sending desperate messages. At that point, Sonia had already been dead for days, buried in a shallow grave that investigators say Hall dug on the night he killed her. The Florida Department of Law Enforcement entered the case after British police contacted them. From that moment forward, the investigation gained momentum. Authorities gathered surveillance footage, financial records, cell phone data, video evidence, all capturing Dwain Hall's purchases and showing attempted transfers from Sonia's accounts. They traced his movements towards the wooded burial site. They saw clips of Sonia bruised, distressed, and led through rehearsed affirmations. Later on, DNA evidence linked her remains to the shovel found at Dwain Hall's home. Piece by piece, the narrative formed not as a tragic suicide, but as a homicide facilitated by exploitation. Back in Portsmouth, the grief hit with the force of a storm surge. Friends described Sonia as creative, quiet, musically talented, someone who needed intervention, not indulgence. Loved ones expressed heartbreak. She had traveled so far with so little understanding of the danger waiting for her. Her death became a point of discussion among mental health advocates in both countries. BBC and local British outlets reported on the vulnerability of people experiencing severe suicidal ideation, particularly when the internet becomes the place they seek solutions. This case, they said, was a warning. Meanwhile, in Florida, law enforcement officials spoke plainly. This was manipulation, predation, and murder. Marion County detectives described the evidence as overwhelming. Hall's arrest came swiftly and publicly. News outlets reported the charges: first-degree murder, kidnapping, fraud, unlawful use of a communication device. As reporters pieced together Sonia's tragic journey, legal analysts weighed the bigger question: can someone consent to their own violent death? Is that even possible? In Florida and in every state in the U.S., the answer is no. Consent does not absolve murder. Consent does not protect someone who manipulates a suicidal person. Consent does not survive the dynamics of coercion and mental illness. Prosecutors emphasized that Sonia's fragile mental state was not permission, it was a red flag, a warning that Dwain Hall, instead of seeking help for her, used as an opportunity. Sonia's partner, in a statement, expressed devastation, but also clarity. He believed she had been exploited. He believed she had been influenced. He believed she had been killed because someone took advantage of her vulnerability. 2 countries now hold pieces of Sonia's story: her life in Portsmouth and her death in Florida, and both are still searching for answers that may never come. In the aftermath of Sonia Exelby's death, the silence feels heavy. The kind of silence that follows a tragedy shaped by loneliness, travel, and the dark corners of the internet. A silence broken only by the steady work of investigators cataloging every final step she took. Her suitcase still sits in evidence. Her final text messages are frozen in digital amber. Her last video survives only because it was recovered after being deleted. And her grave, no deeper than a couple of feet, has been photographed from every possible angle, the soil turned over by gloved hands, searching for meaning. For Sonia Exelby, the journey to America was meant to end everything. For Dwain Hall, investigators allege, the journey was an opportunity to fulfill a fantasy wrapped in the illusion of consent. Cases like this force law enforcement, mental health professionals, and legal scholars to confront uncomfortable truths. People seeking their own deaths are often searching for control, not destruction. Predators offer the illusion of both, and the internet makes the distance between them dangerously thin. If Sonia had met the right person online, the kind of friend who directs you towards help, not harm, this story would not exist. She would still be alive in Portsmouth, perhaps still struggling, but surrounded by people who genuinely wanted her to survive. Instead, her final companion was someone who investigators say weaponized her despair and used her to fulfill their own sick desires. Today, in Marion County, detectives still analyze the notes, videos, and messages that build this case. The prosecution prepares arguments about coercion, manipulation, and predatory intent. The defense, inevitably, will raise the specter of consent, a word that loses all meaning when spoken by someone trapped in their own mind. Back in the UK, candles were lit for Sonia. People posted tributes. Strangers joined her partner in mourning a woman who didn't deserve the path she took. And somewhere in the shadows, behind message boards, behind fetish subcultures, behind usernames no one knows, are others. There are others out there like Sonia, vulnerable people, lonely people, people looking for release. Her story, tragic as it is, may save one of them. The discussion here today may save someone. We must openly discuss our mental health struggles. Sonia's story ended in a grave in the woods after a flight from Portsmouth. I don't want anyone else's story to end the same way. And it is for these reasons that I decided to post this story in the thick of the holiday season. I've been keeping a lot, personal and private, The last 18 months have been the worst of my life. There is one thing going on that I will talk about eventually. There is something else going on that I probably won't talk about because it is too private and it is too painful. But I will tell you, about a year ago, I came the closest I've been since I was a teenager to checking out. I'm not in that place anymore. And I've been on YouTube now for almost 6 years. Of the 5 Christmas seasons I've been on YouTube, only one went by where I was not aware that someone who watched the channel for a long time had decided to end their life. If you are struggling right now, please reach out. You can email me at any time, darkheartswithstacylee@gmail.com. I would obviously prefer that you reach out to a hotline or someone that can get you immediate attention. That would be the best option. But I want you to know I am here and you can email me. I don't want to hear again this year that someone from our community is no longer with us. And I know this is a really hard time of year for a lot of people. It's hard for me this year too. It was hard last year as well. I know this can be a really lonely time of year for people when they watch families get together and they don't have that family. Believe me, I know. But you have to remember, things get better. Things get better. They always do. Every time you have a down cycle in life, things get better. They did last time and the time before that and the time before that. I am not the kind of person that's going to sit here and blow sunshine up your ass and tell you that life is great and always worth living. And, that's just not me. Sometimes life sucks. But if you end your own story, you end all possibility that things could turn around and things could get better and something amazing could happen to you. Please, if you are struggling, find someone, anyone. Maybe you're the type of person that likes to talk to people you trust. Maybe you're the type of person that likes to talk to strangers. Both are available. If it's not someone that you know that you trust personally, find someone in a professional field. There are hotlines. I'm going to put all the numbers up. And I just need you to promise me that you are not going to do anything rash if you're struggling. These next few days are the time, the week leading up to Christmas, the week after that, going into New Year's. This is the time when the numbers go up. And I don't want to lose anyone. I especially don't want to lose anyone from this community. Promise me as your friend that you will reach out if you're struggling. When I was at my lowest, I thought about all the people I love, the people who love me. I thought about you guys. What a disappointment I would be. I don't think I was ever close to doing something, but I was closer than I've ever been as an adult. It's been a really, really hard year and a half, and it's very, very common for Christmas to bring out the worst of the worst feelings. So I just need you to promise me that you'll reach out, okay? I know life can be very lonely and very isolating, but there is always somebody willing to help. There's always somebody willing to lend a hand. Even if you don't innately believe that, believe it from other people that are telling you, we are here. Give us a chance to help you. If you don't believe it yourself, give somebody else the chance to prove to you that they do care. Hell, do it out of spite for all I care. Just don't go anywhere, okay? If you need to reach out, I'm going to put some phone numbers up on the screen. On your cell phone, all you have to dial is 988. You can also text 988. Those 3 numbers, that's it, 988. That gets you to a crisis hotline and puts you directly in contact with professionals. You can also call 911 and ask for assistance. But I want you to promise me you'll do it. I want you back here a year from now, and I want you back the year after that. Things get better. Thank you for joining me today on this dark episode of Dark Hearts. You better keep your promise to me, and you better have a good Christmas. If you lay in bed all day and do nothing, fantastic. If you spend it with your family, great. The world's a better place with you in it. I love you. I'm happy you're here. Thank you so much for being with me today. Thank you so much for listening. You got this. Merry Christmas.